Admiral William D. Leahy, the man who sat between war and power. William D. Leahy never commanded a famous battle. There is no Leahy moment taught in classrooms, no dramatic charge or decisive engagement with his name attached. And yet, no American officer was closer to total wartime power. Leahy served as Chief of Staff to the Commander-in-Chief, a role created specifically for him. This special role meant that every major strategic decision in World War II passed through his hands before reaching Franklin D. Roosevelt, and often before reaching anyone else. Army and Navy disputes, Leahy mediated them. Conflicts between Marshall and King, Leahy arbitrated. Allied disagreements between Americans and British leadership, Leahy was the filter. He presided over the Joint Chiefs of Staff, effectively coordinating the largest military coalition in history while keeping civilian leadership firmly in control. That balance, military efficiency without a loss of democratic authority, was fragile. Other nations failed at it. Admiral Leahy didn't. Leahy attended every major Allied summit: Casablanca, Tehran, Yalta, Potsdam. He sat in rooms where the fate of continents was decided, borders drawn, invasions approved, post-war worlds imagined. He advised Roosevelt privately, candidly, sometimes critically, but only he truly knew the gravity of each decision being made. That mattered because Roosevelt listened. With a more secure conceptual grasp of all the moving parts of World War II, Leahy opposed certain strategic bombing policies, questioned the morality and utility of atomic weapons even after Hiroshima, and dealt with decisions that could either save or kill millions. He did so much more than just advise the president. He was a stabilizing force, perhaps even a greater force than the president himself. A four-star admiral commands fleets. Leahy commanded the decision-making of the most important war in human history. His fifth star recognized something unprecedented, a military officer whose battlefield was the decision-making structure of the entire Allied war effort. Admiral Ernest J. King, the iron will behind naval victory. Ernest J. King was feared, disliked, but indispensable. He had zero patience for politics, incompetence, or hesitation. He also happened to control the largest navy ever assembled during the most complex maritime war in history. King held two roles simultaneously: Chief of Naval Operations, Commander-in-Chief, United States Fleet. That meant every American sailor, ship, submarine, and aircraft carrier ultimately answered to him. After Pearl Harbor, the U.S. Navy wasn't just wounded, it was strategically fractured. Battleships burned in the harbor. The fleet was split across two oceans, the Pacific and Atlantic. In the Atlantic, German U-boats were tearing open Allied supply lines. Merchant ships vanished at night. Oil tankers burned so brightly cities along the East Coast could read newspapers by the firelight. If those convoys failed, Britain would starve. The Soviet Union would be cut off, and the war would collapse. The Navy needed constant presence: destroyers, corvettes, patrol aircraft, escorts that could stay at sea for weeks, hunting an enemy that struck silently and disappeared. Every convoy demanded protection. Every unprotected ship invited disaster. At the same time, in the Pacific, there were no supply lines to defend, only vast emptiness to cross. Japan dealt the first blow, had the islands and the tempo of the war. Every mile west meant operating farther from repair yards, fuel depots, and reinforcements. Every landing meant building an entire floating city just to sustain it. The Pacific demanded aircraft carriers instead of battleships. It demanded amphibious landings under fire, naval aviation coordinated with Marines, and fleets capable of moving thousands of miles without resupply. No other navy in history had been asked to fight two completely different wars in two different oceans, using two different strategic logics at the same time. Defensive endurance in the Atlantic, offensive pressure in the Pacific. Above it all sat one man, forced to balance both without sacrificing either. Failure in the Atlantic meant collapse by starvation. Failure in the Pacific meant a war without end. That was the reality Ernest King inherited. He fought both wars at once. He pushed unrestricted submarine warfare against Japan, a decision that quietly strangled Japanese industry and logistics long before bombs fell on cities. He championed carrier warfare when battleships were still culturally dominant. He fought British leadership hard, refusing to let American naval power be subordinated to European priorities. King oversaw the Navy's expansion from a peacetime force into a globe-spanning armada of thousands of ships and millions of personnel, operating across 2 oceans simultaneously. King's 5th star acknowledged a reality no one could deny. The global naval war could not function without a single coordinating mind at the top, and that mind was his. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, the architect of an oceanic war. Chester W. Nimitz took command of the Pacific Fleet at its lowest possible moment. Pearl Harbor had shattered American confidence. Japan had the advantage. Nimitz inherited a war defined by distance, not fronts, but voids. Thousands of miles of open ocean, supply lines longer than any military force had ever attempted to maintain under fire. He didn't chase Japan everywhere. He chose where to fight. Nimitz helped pioneer a new form of warfare: carriers-centered task forces, long-range naval aviation, and selective island hopping that bypassed strongholds and collapsed Japan's perimeter piece by piece. With this strategy and under his command came turning points that redefined the war. Midway, a 6-minute shift that destroyed Japan's carrier corps. Guadalcanal, grinding, attritional, and decisive. The Marianas, opening the door to Japan itself. Iwo Jima and Okinawa, brutal endgame battles that previewed what an invasion would cost. Nimitz managed millions of sailors and marines, thousands of ships, and the most intricate logistical system ever run across open water. Fuel, ammunition, aircraft replacement, medical evacuation, timing, every variable magnified by distance and isolation. A mistake in Europe costs miles. A mistake in the Pacific costs oceans. His 5th star recognized that he wasn't commanding fleets, he was commanding a planetary theater of war. Admiral William F. Halsey Jr. Aggression at the edge of control. William Halsey built his reputation on one thing: relentless offense. He believed hesitation lost wars. He believed momentum mattered more than caution. And he believed that if you hit hard enough, often enough, the enemy would break before you did. That mindset made him dangerous to the enemy and to his own forces. As commander of the U.S. Third Fleet, Halsey controlled one of the most powerful concentrations of naval force ever assembled. Fast carrier task groups, modern battleships, cruisers and destroyers capable of delivering overwhelming firepower anywhere in the Pacific on short notice. When Halsey was unleashed, Japan felt it. His fleets struck airfields, shipping lanes, and coastal targets with speed and violence unmatched by earlier operations. In the final year of the war, Third Fleet raids devastated Japan's remaining infrastructure and shattered what was left of its ability to maneuver at sea. But Halsey's command style came with a cost. He gambled repeatedly. In Typhoon Cobra, Halsey drove his fleet directly into a massive storm, despite mounting warning signs. The result was catastrophic. 3 destroyers sunk, nearly 800 sailors killed, dozens of aircraft destroyed. No enemy was responsible. The disaster was entirely avoidable. Then came Leyte Gulf, the largest naval battle in history. Halsey took the bait. Fixated on destroying a Japanese carrier force, a decoy designed to draw him away, he pulled his fast carriers north, leaving invasion forces dangerously exposed. Only Japanese hesitation and sheer luck prevented a disaster that could have unraveled the entire Philippine campaign. These were not minor errors, they were failures made at the highest level, and that's exactly why Halsey's 5th star was controversial. Many officers, including some of his peers, believed he lacked the restraint required for ultimate command. He was emotional, reactive, and sometimes blind to the consequences of his own aggression. So why promote him anyway?
Because when Halsey worked, he worked at scale. He commanded forces so large, so fast, and so destructive that they reshaped the battlefield in weeks instead of months. His presence signaled continuous pressure, no pause, no recovery, no safe harbor. The Pacific War demanded different kinds of leaders at different times. Nimitz provided balance and structure. Halsey provided shock. His fifth star wasn't a claim that he was flawless. It was an acknowledgement that he operated at a level where even his mistakes changed the course of the war. He didn't manage chaos carefully. He grabbed it with both hands and hurled it forward. And in a war that demanded speed over perfection, that was sometimes exactly what the United States needed.
Why the fifth star will never return. Five-star rank was never about honor. It was about scope. These admirals controlled entire oceans, millions of personnel, allied coordination, industrial output, presidential decision pathways, wars spanning the globe simultaneously. Today, that authority is deliberately fragmented. Combatant commands divide responsibility. Joint leadership diffuses power. Technology replaces mass. No modern admiral commands the Atlantic and the Pacific. No one sits between the military and the presidency the way Leahy did. No single officer controls naval strategy on a planetary scale anymore.